Hey guys, it's Drac, and this mod guide begins with a story. So while doing the endbringer, I made two pieces that I didn't end up using in it. This is the test piece that I did. It's just a regular Elite Rayven jam door that has that finish on it, and then this is the battery cover that was on the Elite Rayven while I was sanding and prepping the endbringer, and then eventually painting it. It covered the battery door so that that was still clean inside. And since I didn't do anything with these pieces other than make sure that I had the consistency on my enamel blend right, and then later on I just took this off, they cured perfectly. I didn't touch them at any point, so they're both very nice pieces, and I just love the color that I used on the endbringer. So I have these two pieces, and I thought, man, it's a real shame that these don't go on a blaster. And then, while I was doing some schoolwork, Underworld came on, and so I started watching Underworld, and I realized that the color reminded me a lot of the character Selene in Underworld, which is a character that I am rather fond of, and I like the series a whole bunch. So I've decided to use these pieces in a custom Elite Rayven build. So I went to my new in-box closet and I pulled out an Elite Rayven, and I'm just going to start to finish make something really nice. And I've codenamed this project the Selene. I'll probably eventually wind up naming the blaster Selene. So it's going to be a Rayven inspired by these pieces that are left over and the Selene character from Underworld, and I intend to use all enamel paint so that it's just got an ultra durable finish and paint job, and hopefully I can get that shiny kind of gloss look that Selene's outfit has, which is pretty iconic in my opinion. So I'm going to get to work on that. So the most important step in any mod like this that you want to be very special and last forever is to pick out the right paint. I feel like enamel paint is the best paint for Nerf mods that you want to be handled a lot and used, whereas like acrylics have a wider range of color. You have to work much harder with enamel and it takes much longer to dry. So if you're willing to put the time and the effort in and do all of the work, I think that enamel is the best paint. Anyway, that said, the most important thing for any paint job, regardless of the paint that you use, is to get a nice sanding job. And you can see that this is a really chalky finish because I start at 100 grit, I work from 100 to 120 to 180, and then I jump a pretty wide margin up to 300. And so I just sand and sand and sand. I get all of that camo pattern garbage off of it because I think that that's tacky. I knock off all the labels, and then I wash the blaster with kind of a light soap water solution, and then I just dry it down and let it dry in the sun. So this is completely dry and completely sanded and very clean, and I'm looking forward to laying down a base coat of enamel on this and then giving that plenty of time to dry. Between these segments of painting will probably be good 3 to 5 day periods depending upon how heavy the paint is, and I'm actually totally okay with that. I think that the blasters worth having are the ones worth waiting on. Patience is a real virtue in Nerf modding because you want to wait for your enamel to cure and you want to have the patience necessary to get this really good sanding job so that everything sticks perfectly. So about 3 days ago I put on a commercial kind of deep purple enamel paint, and that is set enough that I was comfortable taping over it. So I've come in with frog tape and taped over all of the places that I want to keep that rich purple. You can see that I didn't even bother painting over my my prepped portion with the enamel. It just wasn't necessary because all I wanted was the purple here, so it didn't make sense to hit anywhere else. Now I've mixed up a completely custom kind of, it's supposed to look like an oily kind of color, and it looked okay on the test piece, so I'm going to lay that on the main body now, and in another few days I'll show you what it looks like complete. So you can see here that this is what the Selene looks like now, and I'm out here to clear coat it. Now I've actually chosen a day, and you have no way of knowing this, but it's a little more humid out than I normally use to paint, and there's a reason for it. This has a very shiny finish, but it's not quite wet looking, so I want kind of a little bit of clouding, so I'm going to make that effect by using clear coat and high humidity, and then blow drying it so that I can kind of get it to dry in that state. And hopefully it turns out nice. I have no idea what I'm going to get. So for the Selene, the custom wiring for the battery pack is now complete. This has been divided, and you can see I have a lead coming out that's been soldered for the actual motors. So this will be the motor's cathode, and then the motor's anode will be down here, and then we have cathode anode for the LEDs, which will go up and out. And I sourced these. These are very difficult to come by, but these are I want to say they're Tamiya, and these are specifically Tamiya motors. They're Tamiya Power Dash motors, and they were $10 each, so they're very expensive motors. They cost more each than some Nerf guns, which is just crazy, but they have some of the shortest rev times and some of the best working conditions of any 130 sized motor. So I sourced these, and I'm going to start kind of transplanting them into this flywheel cage, and I'll get that installed shortly. So this is not only a quick polarity check, but also a really good taste of what $20 in motors looks like. So I noticed that the original Nerf switch that stores here for the revving was losing me just a little bit of performance when I was doing the endbringer project. So for this project, since it's purely performance based, I've decided to go to McMaster Car, which is a great part supplier, and order this. It's a lever action toggle switch, and I'll find some way to jerry-rig this in here. So the only real downside of the Rayven traditionally is that the trigger pull is kind of awkward in some cases due to the way that it uses a compression spring. So I decided to completely eliminate that by using an extension spring, which I intend to mount in here. And if I just take this out, you can see I've melted through the pusher rod on both sides, and then I did a quick wrap which goes all the way through there, you can see, and is soldered into place. So the wire that goes around it and holds it in place is soldered, which is in turn soldered to the coil on the end of the extension spring. So that should make for a very nice trigger pull, and that means that everything is more or less ready to go at this point. You can see down here that the switch has been implanted and is just clicky enough, and so I think that everything's just about ready. So at this point the Selene is more or less done internally. You can see that the tack lights have been wired up. Down here all of the internals have been installed. If I lift this up you can see that all the wiring has been soldered. And it's not the cleanest, but this is a purely performance based mod anyhow. So over here we have an extension spring which is just way more efficient and is working very nicely. The trigger pull is now very smooth. And then these Tamiya motors have been wired in, and I currently have regular Energizer batteries in here just for testing, and it's still just, these motors are insane. For those of you that haven't tried these aftermarket Tamiya motors, they are just absolutely awesome to work with. So other than that, everything else is more or less installed. All I have to do is flip it back together, put the barrel back in, and I should be good to go. I am waiting on one part here before I do that. Right now I have the stock rail attachment installed, which is orange, and I think I'm going to do something a little bit nicer. Alright, so you guys can see here that this is the last piece to the Selene blaster, and I was waiting a long time on it. It comes from Grant Cook, which is JodoCast in the Nerfing community, and I really appreciate this gift from him. It was super duper nice of him to print these up for me and send them out. Hey look, it's my address, so if you want to send me fan mail, I guess you can do that now. I will not accept regular fan mail though. I want it on the record that only crazy mail will work, which is like fan mail but crazy, because if you're sending fan mail to a Nerf channel, then you might be a little bit crazy yourself. But these should be custom side plates for the Nerf Rayven, fitted with some screws attached, which is just too cool, and they have a special underworld themed word on them. So there are two options. They both say Death Dealer, and they are just way too cool. I'll have to decide which one of these I want to install and get it put on and painted, but it just looks awesome. I can't wait to try these out. So thank you so much to JodoCast for sending these over all the way from Australia land, which has one of the best nerfing communities ever. Can't wait to go visit them sometime. And I'll put a link to his Facebook page in the description box below, so if you have any ideas for custom 3D printed parts or want anything from him, you are welcome to hit him up. He's very, very fun to talk to and very, very generous. So I'm going to get these installed and show you the final blaster. Alright guys, so this is it. This is the finished Selene Raven, and I just couldn't be happier with it. It has what I like to call a functional paint job, in that the paint job is entirely enamel, which means that it's scratch proof, it's drop proof, it's dust proof, you can just wipe it down. It's got that really nice glossy finish to it, and it's solid. It's just really, really cool how the finish turns out. On top of that, I went ahead and clear coated it, so it turned out really, really nice. It has Death Dealer written here, the battery panel has been done up. Over here it says Selene, down here it has the Fang signature. All of the orange pieces have been left so that it's still very clearly a toy, and everything just is very smooth in its operation. The new way that I did this means that it pulls like a strife. It's just very, very comfortable, but it still has that Bullpup design, which is far superior for tactical applications because it gives you more room to work with. I think you can see here that the LEDs, which have both been mounted up here, are two ultra bright blue LEDs powered off of a Trust Fire, and then there's a different battery in my custom rigged circuit that is an eFest IMR battery. These have the highest voltage drop, and they mean that your rev time is essentially meaningless. Between the new switch and these batteries, by the time you've pulled that trigger, the blaster is already shooting very, very fast, very, very hard. All in all, I think that there are 6 different colors of paint. I'm not entirely sure, but there are multiple kinds of enamel paint. It might be 6 including the orange plastic, but it gives the blaster just a super duper clean, very professional look that I like a lot. Can't mention how cool this nameplate is. Thanks a bunch to Jodo for sending that over. Super duper cool. The switch is in the back here and lights up the LEDs. It's a very clean switch, and it's protected by the shell itself. There's no way to get at it without actually going in there. All in all, I think that's everything about the blaster. All that's left is to fire it. I've loaded up a few elite darts in this sling fire clip, and shouldered, you can, it's gonna be loud, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's just the power of the Tamiya motors. They are by far the nicest motors that I've installed in a Raven. So this is the nicest motors and then the nicest batteries that you can come up with for a nerfing application like this. And so this blaster is an absolute house. I plan on building a set of custom pistols for it. When those are ready, I will put a link to that in this video, kind of showing off the matching pistol set for it. And then when all that's said and done, this will be my kind of blaster for traveling. I plan on using it as a mobile loadout that I mail around the country for doing various HVZ events that I plan on flying to. So I'm going to be the world's first traveling HVZ nerfer, and this should be the loadout that I send ahead of me. It should be good for most colleges games, and if it isn't, I can always hit up a Walmart or something and play with just about anything these days. But that is the Selene Raven. I couldn't be happier with it, and as always guys, thanks for watching. So I store a lot of my blasters in a crawl space beneath my house, and the Selene, this is a good way to show kind of how my tack light works on the Selene. So you can see that there's a bunch of stuff down here that just I haven't gotten around to using. A lot of swords, looks like a Vulcan, some super soakers, a deploy, a swarm fire, and then over here we have various vintage blasters that looks like a manta ray, and just a few different things. And then down here is an AT3K, but I definitely wanted to kind of show how this tack light works because I think that it is super duper sweet. It's integrated in a very similar fashion to my Fanger, whereas it is shielded and built into the blaster, which I think is very, very nice, and they're super duper bright. So that is the tack light, which is just a really nice touch and makes this a great all-around blaster. And as always, thanks for watching.